Let me just start by welcoming everyone to this conversation and ask all of you to please keep muted unless you're speaking, but please remember to unmute. This session is going to be about building back better and designing a future that leaves no one behind. And I know I do not need to talk about this moment we are in. It is probably the most challenging one humanity has yet faced. Unfortunately, maybe not the most challenging we will face, because our challenges are plenty. If we just take a look at the last month, we've had wildfires, weather events, natural disasters that have gone from California to the Caribbean, from Brazil to Bangladesh, and I'm just naming a little. And this is all confronting us during a time when COVID is still unfolding and impacting us. And COVID has certainly exposed our brokenness, and it's certainly accelerated our crisis of inequality that was already very challenging for our societies, but has become even more so. And I would say even particularly around race and gender lines. And so today we're going to talk about building back better, and we're going to bring that lens to it. And with that, I'm going to make really quick introductions to this esteemed panel that we've put together today. I feel like I am in a universe of buzzing bees, because all of you somewhere exist in our universe of our work for the B team. And I'm so proud that you all take the time to have this conversation. I could spend so much time introducing you because you have incredible backgrounds, but I'm going to make it simple so we can use the time to talk and introduce you by your first name only, for 3 reasons. One is, in Iceland, we only use first names, and that's where I'm from. And when we used to have phone books, we used to organize them by first name only. So it is what I naturally do. 2, some of you have last names that I was struggling with pronouncing. And if you're going to make fun of me for saying that, try pronouncing my last name and you'll be okay. And last but not least, we've all been in so many virtual rooms by now that I think it's important we bring our humanity and just hold our status with humility in this moment. So we've been joined, and we will speak in this order, with Sylvia, who actually is the Sustainable Growth Officer for Natura & Co., but is also a graduate of working with Unilever earlier in her life. I don't think I'm exaggerating when I say that Natura & Co., which includes brands like Body Shop, Avon, and Aesop, in addition to its own brand Natura, it has probably come out with one of the most ambitious visions called Commitment to Life, which includes a commitment to net zero by 2030, closing the gender gap in leadership by 2023, and uplifting human rights and humankind, which I find particularly exciting. Next, we will have Hiro, who recently joined the board of Tesla, but was previously the chief investment officer of the Japanese government pension fund, probably the largest asset owner in the world. And I don't know another asset owner that has pushed harder for long-termism and aligning portfolios with ESG metrics. And he continues to do that in so many capacities now that I'm not going to count all the advisory boards and roles you have now, Hiro. And then we are joined with Peter, a new CEO of Safaricom, took over in the midst of COVID, difficult time, but doesn't seem to be letting down the legacy of his predecessor, our late Bob Collymore, and recently earned 7th place in Companies Changing the World in Fortune's list published earlier this week. Then we have Lena Nair from Unilever since 1992. She has had so many firsts that I'm not surprised to learn that as a chief HR officer for the group, she's also turned Unilever into the first choice for employees on every list I've come across for years now. And last but not least, we have Danny, who fearlessly, as CEO of Oxfam, addresses inequality and poverty and injustices every single day as his role in this world. So you can see that we have quite people to learn from, and we're going to focus on uplifting hope. There's plenty to worry about. We've all heard enough about our challenges. We want to focus on how these leaders are meeting this moment. And we'll start with Sylvia. You've, of course, been disrupted like other consumer products company and other companies all over the world, but how have you responded to this difficult time for business and our economies? And how has this moment, this difficult moment in our history, affected your commitment to life?
So first of all, thank you, Hala. It's a pleasure to be here representing Natura & Co. I joined the group only in February this year, but I've been on the board for 5 years. So, and you gave a really nice introduction. Just what I want to say that we indeed launched our commitment to life on the 15th of June this year, but we're very new as a group and only got Avon to join the group in January this year. And as part of the process of welcoming Avon, we had a look again at our ambition, our aspiration. And I think, we describe it as we want to become the best beauty company for the world, not in the world. We shamelessly stolen that little phrase from the Corp. And our commitment to life that you mentioned is kind of our strategy, our path towards our ambition to become the best beauty company for the world. So it's a set of ambitious goals, as you said, but we've been working on it during the pandemic, finalizing it during the pandemic. And I would say that we just got bolder. The more time we worked on it, the more things got worrying, the bolder we decided to get. So we like touching things up right to the last minute. As you said, we're committed to becoming net zero, scopes 1, 2, 3, 20 years ahead of what we signed up with the UN last year. And then we also phrase this commitment to protect the Amazon. And here our work is around fostering collective efforts to stop deforestation by 2025, hopefully before. And I think that goal, we got very passionate about it. I think seeing a little bit of void in leadership and in the current times, and felt that we could do something about fostering collective effort. As you said, the second pillar, we like it the way we called it. It's called Defend Human Rights and Be Humankind. There are a few goals in there, the 3 mega goals there, but one of them, to your point about inclusion, obviously we're kind of very touched by everything that's going on around inequality. I think the boldest move we made there in context of the pandemic is we went for what we think is going to be very hard to achieve, but we're starting now, which is to get 30% of our management from underrepresented groups in every single country where we operate in the time of the plan. There's more there, but I just don't think we have time. But commitment also to find the right measure, but we're committed to showing measurable increase in wealth, education, health for the 6 million plus communities and 20,000 plus consultants, and then communities in the Amazon and other places from where we source our ingredients. So there's another one around measurably seeing improvement in wealth and health and education for wider communities. And the third pillar is linked to the first one, is to embrace circularity and regeneration. We're promising to be fully circular in our packaging and our product in 10 years. So I would say it got bolder, we got more determined as opposed to less.
I'm so impressed with that. And I had the pleasure of being there when you uplifted the possible Amazon collaboration a year ago. And so I think you've also become more collaborative. You already were, but you were bringing other stakeholders along in a beautiful way. So thank you for your bold and brave leadership, Sylvia, to all of our friends. Hero, I would like to move next to you. You're a new board member of Tesla. You've been a long-standing advocate for long-termism and ESG. Why is it so important that we consider these issues as we build back better? And you recently shared with me that you believe in gender and diversity, but you don't see it in Japan. So maybe you can bring a little bit of that lens to how we will build back better.
Sure, thank you. Thank you for having me. It's my pleasure to join this this discussion. Well, I really grew up in finance and asset management industry. Ever since I graduated from college, I spent all my career in this, doing the investments, and then so I always observe how the corporates are responding to this kind of like a pandemic or any crisis like a Lehman crisis from the investors' perspective. But recently, I had a great experience, managing $1.5 trillion world's largest pension fund as an investment chief for 5 years, which actually led me to the conclusion that what I learned either at the finance finance training courses or like even at the on-the-job training didn't give me any hints how I can manage $1.5 trillion, believe it or not, because that we are told to manage a portfolio either in line with the what's going on in the market, or like just trying to be be competitive against the other investors. In other words, that we are expected to beat the market or beat the other investors. But the managing $1.5 trillion made me feel that it's not practically possible. So I just came to realize that all I could have done was to do everything to contribute to make the whole capital market more sustainable. And I concluded that for us to have the sustainable capital market, society has to be sustainable. And to have the society, to have a sustainable society, we need to make sure the environment is sustainable. So it's a kind of like the total change of my mindset, how the investors should prepare themselves for the big systemic issue like a climate change or like a social, the inequality and those kind of things. So the serving on the in the position as a chief investment officer of the big pension fund, made me realize that the investor has been in a way too selfish, or we're actually trained to be selfish because we are only we are only valued when we beat the market. So I decided to just push more holistic thinking, and I try to educate my team at the government pension fund. Our job is not to beat the market, but to contribute to make the whole capital market more sustainable. So that's the background, thinking of all my the career choices. And joining the Tesla board, as you mentioned, is another example of how I could approach to the corporate, the auto industry to accelerate the transformation to or transition to a sustainable energy and sustainable transportation. So I think it's very important for the corporate and investor to share the common goal. And I was always very frustrated that the investor is so short-term focused. And on one hand, they are talking about the importance of the ESG, like a long-term, like a sustainability, and also the social issue, like gender equality and those kind of things. But when they actually make a decision, how they invest or how they divest, they only looking at what's happening today's stock market, or like all the information coming out of like a quarterly reporting. So I think the investors should react and should cooperate with the other corporates to make sure that we are both promoting long-termism and sustainability in the business and in the capital market.
And I have seen, and we all have seen, how you used your muscle and made money a force for good when you pressured the largest asset manager in the world, BlackRock, by using your investment muscle. And now BlackRock has really upped its game on ESG. And so we can see that people taking this holistic mindset and a bigger definition of success from the asset owner perspective can actually make meaningful impact pretty fast. So thank you for your leadership on that, Hiro. And I would like to now go to Peter, who became CEO of Safaricom during some of the most difficult times in the world, and yet became number 7 on companies that are changing the world really fast. How can you give us a bit of, you're from the giant telecommunication company in Africa. Can you give us an insight into how this has impacted you and maybe more broadly business in Africa this period of time, and how has it impacted your commitment to equality and sustainability? You've always been at the forefront of that.
Thank you, Hara, for welcoming me. Thank you, Hala, for welcoming me. I have unmuted. Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
So thank you. It's good that you said that I came in at an interesting time. So joined the company on the 1st of April in the middle of the crisis when the lockdown had already been announced, and also travel advisories and flight cancellations and all that stuff. So at a personal level and at a leadership level, it was an interesting time, first of all, to start getting into a new company as CEO, connect with the teams, but also given Safaricom's position, start to support the country and actually partner with others in particular. We've done a lot with government, with the Ministry of Health. We've used M-Pesa, which is the global leader in mobile money, to either in giving customers free transactions below 1,000, or indeed actually being the conduit for funding vulnerable population during this period through the government funding. So it's been significant. But on the other hand, of course, as a telecom provider, our primary objective during this period is to keep everyone connected. We realize just how important it is to remain connected, but also now data becomes a lot more important. And we realized just how big inequality we have. And that is not just in Kenya, which is where Safaricom is based, it is across Africa. But the biggest impact, although this is a health crisis, the biggest impact has been on the economic side, because most people earn on a daily basis, and the hardest hit parts of the business has been the SME sector. And the SME is an important enabler for a lot of our economies across sub-Saharan Africa. It's 90% of kind of the economy this is from the IFC. In Kenya, it contributes 40% of GDP and 80% of employment. So I've been and the organization Safaricom has been focused on going on a journey to support SMEs so that it enables the economy to recover. And I believe in the past, but potentially we have not paid enough attention to SMEs, both on our value chain as suppliers, but also as part of the route to consumer value chain partners. But the role they play has been demonstrated during this period, and therefore, as a telecommunication organization that also owns mobile money, we are providing solutions around working capital, working with partners in the industry, but also starting to think about holistic ICT solutions because of working from home, always on, so to make sure that SMEs are enabled going forward, and I have a lot of passion for it. I believe it will make a big difference both in Kenya but across Africa.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Peter. I'm actually quite impressed with how you managed to come in at this time. And from what I understand, you are really committed to gender equality. 51% of your workforce is women. And I understand you've already made a commitment to be 50% gender balanced by the end of this year. So I find this quite remarkable in an area where we know gender equality has been and continues to be a struggle. So I appreciate your leadership on that, and want to take a moment to say that your predecessor, Bob Collymore, was such an important leader for us on the B team. And today, in his honor and largely because of his leadership, we are launching a CEO guide on gender balance and inclusive cultures, and it's shared here in the chat. But really, our goal this fall is to really call on businesses to make a decision to close gender and race gaps in leadership. because we cannot change how we do business and how we lead unless we change who is in leadership and who is doing business. And it's critical to us on the B team that we make this happen. And just like we uplifted climate 5 years ago, we think it's time now to uplift a period where we truly change the face of leadership and start transforming how we do things. So I invite everyone in the audience to check out the guide, hopefully make good use of it, hopefully commit to us to close these gaps by 2025. And I also invite you to put in questions and comments as we go through our last two speakers for opening, as we want to make this an interactive session. So having talked about leadership and changing the face of it, Lena, you are an idol to me and many in that role. And in your role with Unilever, you have really pushed equality and human rights like no other. Why has this been so important to you? What has been the outcome of doing this? And what advice do you have to all the business leaders listening on why this is important and helps you drive better business?
It's great to be on this call, Hala, with all the speakers. You know, I really believe that a crisis shows the true colors of a company and the true colors of an institution. And a crisis is a time to really live the purpose and values, because all the talk about purpose and values comes to reality during a crisis, which is lived through action. So I'm really proud of the way we have responded to COVID by putting people first, and by ensuring that people first is not just people who work for us, but people in our value chain and people in our communities. So we were straight off the mark saying we're going to protect lives and livelihoods for 3 months for everyone who works for us in any capacity. We said we're going to give 100 million worth of soaps and sanitizers, because soap is the only protection against a virus. And we are going to give $500 million worth of credit to all our suppliers and partners across our value chain. So it's really, really important that we led this from the front, because these are our purpose, this is our DNA, this is our values. I just want to reflect on a couple of your questions. You know, having been part of Unilever for so many years and seen our transition, my first advice would be that you've got to integrate sustainability, environmental and social goals into your business strategy. You can't have sustainability sitting there and business strategy sitting here. They have to be integrated. So our purpose is to make sustainable living commonplace. And we have 3 beliefs that we all buy into. Companies with purpose last, brands with purpose grow, people with purpose thrive. So that is our one-page strategy. That is, you know, nobody will forget it. Those are 3 beliefs. That's a simple strategy. So what helps is if you integrate all the efforts you're doing on environmental and social with everything the company needs to do to grow better, to be more productive, to be more profitable, then it's one integrated narrative and one integrated story. You know, one of the things I've been struck by is the globality of this issue, because having 160,000 people work in 190 countries means we have seen every government respond differently. Every government went through its own curve of denial, acceptance, response, rehabilitation. So we've done things we never thought of before. We've, you know, bought 250,000 tests for 17 of the countries that didn't have testing. We created ventilators on our factory shop floors. We converted our trucks and our warehouses into ICUs to take care of our people and the communities around us. So it's once your purpose and intent is clear, you will find the means to make it alive and do what you think you need to do. Look after people, look after communities, look after lives, look after livelihoods in every single way. I do think central to all these efforts is gender. You know, one of the philosophies we followed is get our own house in order, our operations, our teams, our people, then focus on our value chain, then use the power of our brands to spread the word and influence and drive change in the world. And last but not the least, advocate through partners, through the power that we have of our presence in so many countries, understand, you know, our relationships with so many bodies. So we try and do all of the four, but getting our house in order, which is why I was particularly pleased when we could announce to the world that we'd become gender balanced, because I think unless we as a company are gender balanced, we don't have the license to tell everyone else, do more on equity, do more on gender. So that was a big step forward for us this year. And what I've seen in the crisis is it is increasing resolve and determination of the company and the people associated with the company. I truly believe safe havens will stand out. People will recognize the companies, the institutions that put people first, that put environmental and social goals first, that put communities first. So I actually see this as a time for Unilever to be stronger, more determined, more resolute, work with more partners to drive change in the world.
Beautifully said, Lena. People with purpose thrive. It's clear why people want to join Unilever team, and it's clear that your leadership is not just inside your company but beyond. But getting our own house in order is key to being able to ask, whether it be it governments or other peers, to step up their game. So you've certainly been doing that. Danny, you heard from bold and brave business leaders, yet every day you also know we have many who are not bold and brave. Please be our sounding board here, because SDG 17 is such an important goal, and we are not going to get to this reset or this new future where we manage on behalf of all stakeholders the way everybody here is trying to do, unless civil society, business, and governments work together. What do you appreciate from what you've heard here? What could we do better? How can civil society and business actually meet this moment and let the reset that we so desperately need happen?
Great, thanks, Hala. Look,
you're on mute, Danny. Sorry.
Oh, I shouldn't be.
No.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You're gone again. Sorry.
It's showing I'm not on mute here. Okay, great. So, look, thank you very much.
I hear you now. I don't know why.
You can or you cannot?
No.
Okay, great. Look, thank you very much for the chance for us to interact in this way. Look, I think the B team creates a really important space for us to talk about these sorts of issues, and it's always inspiring for me to hear the likes of Sylvia or Lena or Peter or Hero, because I think you do represent the sort of the thoughtful, progressive, even radical end of where businesses are. And I like Lena's point very much about this crisis being a moment where character shows, and I think we need to encourage as much good practice as we can. But in some ways, what I'm missing is that the good are behaving better in some ways during the coronavirus pandemic, but the bad are behaving worse. And where I sit, the worry that we have is that we are in the midst of what could be called a great reversal on so many of the really important, hard-fought gains we've had. If you look at poverty, we think 400 million people more will be pushed into poverty as a result of this pandemic. But at the same time, if you just take in income inequality, for example, the world's richest 25 billionaires, we think, are going to be $250 billion better off, or are already $250 billion better off than they were at the start of this pandemic. We published a recent report about excessive company profits during this crisis, and one of the statistics that colleagues used was the fact that if Jeff Bezos paid every single one of his 800,000 Amazon employees $100,000 as a one-off bonus, he'd still be richer than he was at the start of this pandemic. And so, in some ways, for me, what really worries me is that we need to fundamentally change the rules of the game, the nature of how capitalism works, if we're going to allow folk that are on this call, and I suspect many people who are listening, to thrive, right? Because this is the moment. If we're going to build back better, we need to change the architecture, the incentives, the structures around how capitalism works. And I think that's going to be the once-in-a-generation opportunity that we have. So obviously promoting and supporting good practice, that's going to be really important, but really using this moment to fundamentally change the nature. And I think there are some, from a civil society point of view, there are lots of touch points. I think there's something around profits and how profits work. I mean, it can't be right that the world's 10 biggest apparel companies continue to pay dividends to shareholders while cancelling orders so that garment workers in Bangladesh or Cambodia or Myanmar are not getting paid anything, and they don't have a safety net to fall back on. And so there has to be something around the way that sort of shareholder capitalism works. I think we need to look at, I think we have to look again at tax and how that works. It's tragic to see just at the moment when developing country governments need more fiscal revenue to pay for health interventions and other interventions, that those funds are still being leaked out, hemorrhaged out of those economies. You know, it's tragic to hear that there's more money going out of Ghana as a result of illicit financial flows than the Ghanaian government spends on health budget every year. That just can't be right. And I think also around protection, you know, this is the moment where I think we have to get real about making sure that we give everyone on the planet a safety net. You know, I think progressive companies, and we work closely with Unilever and many others who I suspect are on this call, have started to think about their supply chain and being serious about protection of workers throughout that network. And I hope this pandemic is a wake-up call for us to get serious about making sure that everyone, every human being has that enjoys the basic right to having the wherewithal to be able to survive and be resilient in the face of shocks like this. And we are all in this together. You know, this is a great reminder, Hala, as you say, of how deeply interconnected the economy is, the world is, society is. And I hope when we rebuild and build back better, we think about those connections. And here, just let me conclude by the really important role that progressive businesses have. I think, you know, we in civil society will continue to shout, we'll continue to hold power to account, but progressive businesses, investors in the way that Hero talks about, I think can really amplify some of these goals. And I think there's a sort of responsibility, I hope, of progressive allyship from businesses in support of some of these measures. So really important moment in human history, as you say, Hala, I think, but the onus is on all of us to live up to those expectations or the potential of this moment.
Thank you, Danny, for keeping it real for us. What you said resonated really strongly with me. I've been co-chairing a collective network of coalitions called Imperative 21. And last week, we uplifted a massive campaign, not that campaigns solve the problems in the world, but we came together, artists, activists, civil society, business leaders, even NASDAQ, and really uplifted this new vision or this demand for a reset around three imperatives: interdependence, recognizing that people, planet, and our economies are interdependent, and so are civil society, private sector, and government. Recognizing that we now must invest in justice because we have structures that keep the inequalities going, and this winner-takes-all economy is not giving equal opportunity or possibility to reset and reshape the world so that it works. And last but not least, that we start accounting for all stakeholders. So before I take specific questions, which I continue to invite in the chat, I would like to do a really quick round with all of you. Is ESG, which even the accountants uplifted yesterday, we now have warrior accountants in the world, and we should take a pause and stop when we have a WEF event where the big four accounting firms and Bank of America stand together with their highest leaders in command, notable all men, but they uplifted that common metrics along the lines of ESG and shared prosperity. So we are at a moment, it feels like, where something is new, but I would love to hear from each one of you, maybe starting with Hero, just a quick reply. Will ESG as a new measurement for success get us there? Yes or no? And quickly explain why.
Yes, it should. I'm not saying yes, it is, but it should. And I think everybody's now working in that direction. And a lot of the missing link is now being addressed. And one of those, the main missing link was the accounting standard. And as Hala, you mentioned, like now the four major accounting firms is now about to unveil the ESG accounting principle. So all the missing links now getting linked up, and so it should be the way for the investor to measure corporate performance, and that's how the investor should make money.
And Peter, as a CEO, do you agree?
If I can come off mute. Yes, I think I'll say like Hero, I think it should, but it really depends on commitment, leadership commitment, and actually just pushing the boundaries around shared value. Because one of the things that I've learned in running a company like Safaricom is how important purpose is, and connecting that to the commercial objectives of the organization. So the intent needs to be there, but I feel that the measurement will make a big difference. We do what we measure, or we deliver what we measure, but I think the commitment is what needs to come through.
Thanks, Peter. And Lena?
I think it's a great step forward, but it's not enough. It's a necessary but not sufficient condition. We need leadership and commitment for sure. We need a huge change in investor mindset. Let me say honestly, how many investors really care about ESG metrics or people metrics, or are you making, very, very little spotlight is thrown on it. And what bugs me is that in the 21st century, people only sit at the cost line of a P&L. Even in today's day and age, people are a cost. Nobody talks about the intangible value of people, or the fact that people are the ones who are going to take the environmental and social actions to make us more sustainable. So I think the investing community needs a huge rethink along of what it really wants to look for in companies. And we need leadership and commitment from companies. And we need a revisit of all the financial tools. How do we set up P&Ls? How do we look at balance sheets? What's designed as success for companies? What's the metrics for success? We have to bring the multi-stakeholder thinking into everything. So yes, it's a good step forward. 4 big firms agreeing, good, great step forward, but it's not enough.
Thank you, Lena. And Sylvia, maybe if I can add both for your answer, and we have a question about your gender balance goals. Where are you now, and where do you intend to be by when? Because that is a new measurement that not everybody is disclosing right now. You are on silent, Sylvia.
Thank you. Let me just do that one quickly. We are on all office management and above already over 50% in representation. We did a calculation on parity, and we are finishing the calculation, but we are committed to closing the pay difference in 2 years. We now looked at more numbers. I think we can close it next year. So I think on women, we're there, except board and CEO plus below CEO, only that super senior level, we are, I think, 34 or 36% only women, but we said we're going to be 50 by next year or the year after. So I think on gender, we're very close, very close. I think the challenge for us is beyond gender. Really, the challenge is beyond gender. On your question, ESG, I'm an engineer by training, although I had most of my career in marketing. I had several hours of meetings to try to understand the metrics and the thinking behind the kind of EPML. So we need help. I'm all over our numbers. I took a long time to understand the B Corp certification, which is tough. It's systemic, it's comprehensive, and I get it. I would push very hard for our commitments to be easy to measure or difficult to measure, but we know how to measure and we'll measure. And where there is no measure, like biodiversity, we're going to make sure there's measurement for biodiversity and work with the UN and science-based target people to get there. So just like we need these people who are now getting on board, the big accounting firms, etc., to help move this from, yes, we'll have it, to actually teaching us and teaching everybody and teaching the world how to do it. But yes, we'll find it.
Thank you, Sylvia, and I appreciate your bold leadership on the gender front. I know that you're probably ahead of the pack there. Hero, before I come to you, Danny, just quickly, this is the group of progressive business leaders, and I'm just really curious. We know that 25 to 30% of investment now has a responsible / ESG sustainable lens of some sort, but that also means 70% doesn't. And these leaders probably do not represent the mainstream yet. Do you think that this uplifting and rallying around ESG is going to help us get to the future that is just and inclusive and more fair? Or where's your skepticism? Where's your belief?
No, I think I am optimistic about measurement. And if you can remember what Albert Einstein said famously, that not everything that counts can be counted. If I don't do him a disservice, I do think, though, that better counting will give us a better chance of it making it count. And so I think better metrics and frameworks will be really useful, particularly from where we sit, which is that consumer behavior is going to be critical, just as I think Hero and others have made the point that investor behavior is going to be critical. And for consumers, we need much more effective ways of being able to help them discern which companies really are walking the talk on some of these. And until we get, and we've seen it work really well on particular initiatives around fair trade or particular sectors. But I think we need a broader framework so that informed consumers can take their money and their consumer power towards organizations that are doing well and helping them to thrive in the post-COVID world.
I think you're so right about the transparency fact. I think that's one of the things why disclosures, it's not just about the measurement, it's about the transparent disclosures to build trust in a society that frankly doesn't trust many people or many institutions right now. So that's going to be critical. And I understand why people question whether this is for real, because it's an alphabet soup of all kinds of metrics out there, and we have not come together on that. Hero, you raised your hand earlier. Please come in.
Yeah, I just want to respond to the Sylvia's point. Like, the financial analysis is not as scientific, as mathematical as the other engineering, the profession. So I've been pushing the ESG disclosure because my peer financial analyst uses the lack of standardized disclosure as an excuse not to take those like sustainability or ESG matter into their analysis. So if you look at how much the gap information or financial accounting information really accounts for the current stock market, it's less than 10%. So the investor uses a lot of non-financial data to come up with their their valuation. So as a matter of fact, I mean the standardized information will not be as consistent as the engineer think. It's more like artistic in a way, always. Although the investor trying to sound like they're really scientific, but it's not. I chose this profession because I'm not very mathematical. So, but I just think like, we have been using this, our industry have been using a lack of the standardized information of data sets as an excuse for inaction. That's the reason I've been hopeful. This the major accounting firms, the initiative will at least get, take away those excuses, and the investor have to walk the talk. Because if you ask investors if they believe in ESG, these days, it's very rare to bump into some investors who say they don't care about ESG. They say they do care, but in reality, they are still looking for the excuse of not to implement it. So that's why I'm very hopeful this will make some difference.
I appreciate, Hero, you commenting on something that I've long said, which is our over faith in the rational economic man has actually failed us. And that started probably with Milton Friedman's shareholder primacy doctrine. It's been 50 years that's driven growth, but it hasn't shared it equally or in just ways, for sure. And so now we've, through the Imperative 21 work we've been doing, we're uplifting, that we need to accelerate to stakeholder capitalism. So I appreciate you uplifting. That's not just about our rational thinking or rational measures. It's about our emotional intelligence, about our humanity, really being unleashed at this moment. And on that note, we have a question from the audience to all of you. I'll see who raises their hand to get going on this. But what would you say to women-owned businesses or minority-owned businesses that do not have the same access to the big decision makers in big companies like yours, how do they get to the table and actually be seen by companies like you so that we can direct more business and prosperity, shared prosperity, to the SMEs that Peter rightfully pointed out are the backbone of our economy and of our society? So who would like to go first on that one? Lena, up first, and then Peter.
Firstly, on behalf of Unilever, anyone out you in the audience who wants an idea read, just email me. I'll make sure you connect it to the right person in Unilever. Don't worry at all. Just send it to me. And we are always interested in small businesses, entrepreneurial ideas, female-led. Fantastic. The second thing is the providing access to female-owned businesses, to sponsors who can open their networks for them is really important. So this is the time that you must reach out to senior leaders of companies who can open their networks to investors and others who can invest. So, there's no shortcut to getting in touch with those of influence and power, and you have to find a way to reach them through others who are willing to open the doors for you.
Thanks, Lena. Peter.
Thank you, Hara. I think it's a great question, and the way that I look at the question is to say, diversity is not just about the employees that we employ. It's also about how we conduct ourselves in the market, and how we who we source from, and how we do business, and that. So it needs to be holistic. So I would say it's about persistence. I think there's no question that if I use the parallel diversity and fight for diversity and inclusion, there's no question about being persistent, because it needs changing views. But also, I think the most important is also to focus on companies that have already, like ours, that have already declared publicly that we will promote women businesses, but also women in technology. Remember, the actual barrier sometimes tends to be that the lack of capability becomes embedded. So it is actually going after companies that have been very, very explicit, and potentially the ESG question should also capture some of this.
I love that you said that. I've personally had my own definition for ESG. I call it ESG cubed, because I think there are 3 legs to the E, there are 3 legs to the S, and then on the G one, which is really the levers for change, I really think about gender and inclusion, generation, and governance, moving from shareholder primacy to stakeholder governance as the 3 levers we need to think about now. Again, this underpins our thinking for why we need to change who in order to change how we do things. And the next generation, who we should hold ourselves accountable to, and gender and inclusion and different ideas on governance are going to be the levers that let us tackle our climate crisis and our crisis of inequality the most effectively, in our view. Anyone else want to come in on this question?
Yeah, I think Hala. So it makes me think this, and I don't have much ready answer, but just 2 things. Interesting. We have 6 million consultants, who are the mostly women who represent our brands, both Avon and Natura, to the final consumer, and incredible learning on how to measure how much they're growing, both economically and in health terms and in education terms. But I think we are going to share most of the learnings we have as part of our membership now of the United Nations Global Compact created 4 initiatives. We're sponsoring 2 of them, one on climate, one on gender. And the whole point of that program is to activate it through the local networks in all the countries. It's, I think, 70 plus countries, and bring to that group, to that country, the best practices to smaller companies, smaller businesses, and continue to build best practices, document, catalog them, and make them available. So I guess my only comment is watch out, or hold me accountable as partners of the United Nations Global Compact to make those initiatives practically helpful to people. And one of them is precisely on how to advance gender. So happy to give more information later, but I think that is one practical route to help.
Fantastic. We seem to just have lost Hero, but this is, the era of expecting the unexpected with both the times we live in and the technology we deal with. We are coming towards the final 10 minutes or so in our conversation. And unless I get more immediate question, I thought I would do a final round with you, because it sounds like you are the progressive people. You know what you want. You're fairly aligned. We need a reset. We need to put people first. We need to make sure our people live on a healthy planet, and we need to change how we governance to be on behalf of all stakeholders and do that with ESG, but probably greater ambition than where we are starting. So we will continuously need to, so I feel like we're aligned. So the question I have, a final round, is what are you doing, or what could you and those listening do to help make the systemic transformations happen? Because we appreciate your bold and brave leadership. It really matters in transforming the system, but we're not moving at the speed and scale overall for business. So how do you push for those systemic shifts, and how could those listening raise their voices, their votes, their wallets to help push it? I would really appreciate a quick insight from each of you. And Peter, if I may start with you.
Thank you, Hala. I think for me, the biggest, we talk about the issues we've had during the pandemic, but I think the biggest opportunity and what we have seen from the pandemic is the importance of just fast tracking the digital age. And actually that will, especially in places like Africa, where we haven't had landline infrastructure and all this other stuff, we can enable people and build capabilities through building ability to use the internet, access to data. On the supply side for us is a commitment to make sure that no one is left behind in the whole aspect about connectivity and financial inclusion, which are two big areas that I believe will make a big difference. So purpose, continuing to live through purpose.
Fantastic. Absolutely. These are infrastructure issues that we can solve and have the technology to solve. We just need to do it so people have opportunities. Thank you, Peter. Lena, may I go to you next?
Yes, let me talk about two things. One as individuals and one as a business leader. We are not yet seeing the impact this is going to have on our mental well-being, on our emotional well-being. The amount of anxiety, depression, loneliness, isolation, which we're just beginning to see post the economic crisis we're beginning to see. We haven't even reached the well-being crisis we're going to see. So as individuals, I'd really urge us at this time to have empathy and compassion. Hashtag reach out to help out. Every single day, just connect to one person in your circle or broader than your circle who will just feel better by connecting with you. I was delighted to see you today, Hala, and delighted to see the panelists. It's just that little bit of energy. So reach out to help out would be my advice for us as human beings. Just reach out and reach out to people you normally haven't reached out to. As business leaders, I would say the 6 months has also shown us that we can adapt to change quite quickly. Who would have imagined the whole world will switch on their laptops and we'd all continue producing and supply chains would continue making and selling and everything. So we have shown we have huge capacity for change and adaptation. So I would say this is the time as business leaders to really bottle up what worked in these 6 months and accelerate that. The agility, the speed, the newness, the being there for each other, the protecting livelihoods and lives. Put all of that and accelerate it. Bottle that up.
I love that.
And bottle it up. To advise.
I love that. I think you're right that the next pandemic may be mental well-being or lack thereof, and there are signals of that companies are picking up. So we must meet this moment not just with systemic change, but with compassionate leadership. I appreciate that. Sylvia. Can't hear you, Sylvia.
I think for us, and for me personally, it's very important to set some goals and start moving towards them. So I think action brings confidence and then more action. So that's on the more like the engineer in me, like just set some goals and go chase them now and bring more people in, start to hire, start to learn how to integrate underrepresented, groups into our culture. But the other thing that's been very helpful to us is to increase the level of consciousness. So that's both talking to thinkers that help us think, reading a lot more, how to be an anti-racist, really, and talking to the people in the forest, talking to our consultants, talking to people in need. So I think there's the doing, but then raising the level of consciousness by opening your mind and open your heart with it, but actually reaching out and learning.
Thank you, Sylvia. Hero, to bring you up to speed, we lost you for a moment there. I'm asking everyone to comment quickly on what you are doing to bringing sectors along, your peers, because you are the converted, you get it, but most don't. What couple of things could you share and maybe suggest to the audience of what they can do to help make this transformation and this reset happen? Yeah.
Well, I think we just need to now focus on how to pay back to our future generations, because every time I look at how stock market is really performing and it's showing kind of like a disconnect from what's really happening on the ground. We just, it just makes me kind of realize every morning watching the stock market, like we are basically borrowing from future generations and using the money we borrow from them to ease our pain today. So that kind of the sense of inclusion of the future generation is something I really, believe that people have to bear in mind every step we take from now on. And my advice to the investor community is like, we have been always making a decision looking backwards. And every time I try to advocate, the most common counter argument, not academically proven, or it's not, it's not proven that it will, contribute to the better performance. And I say like, hey, come on, like if we are in a society, it cannot be academically proven. It will be proven someday, but it's not be proven when we take an action. So first of all, we need to go back to what the Warren Buffett says. Investor has to be long-term forward-looking. That's the profession we are in. So we actually want to remind my fellow financial specialists and investors to remember once again what we are paid for. We are not paid to just confirm what's happening in the market today. So that's one thing. And for the corporate executive and management and corporate workers, I really hope that you believe in the stakeholder capitalism and you wouldn't lose the faith in the investors to support it, right? Because we need to have a mutual kind of trust to make it happen. Because if once I don't believe in that, it's not going to happen. Because stakeholder capitalism is all about the both. Everybody believe in each other. Will be supporting the system for the common good.
Thank you, Hero. You have all given such great example. But Danny, I'm going to give you the rallying cry to call to action to your fellow panelists, to those listening. What do we need to do to meet this moment so that we can live in that future that we all envision and dream of and work towards, but so many don't? What can we do?
Yeah, I think the simple answer surely has to be that we have to dream big. I was on a panel the other day with a young African activist who was saying that the conditions of the world are, are dismal at the moment, but we can't afford to let go of our dreams. And I think, in some ways, the bigger the disruption, the bigger our response needs to be. And there is if you ask for examples of what we're doing, earlier this year, at the start of the year, we published a report on unpaid care globally, and Lena knows about this very well. But we said that if you paid unpaid care workers a fair wage, it'd be an industry worth $11 trillion a year, 3 times the size of the global tech industry. And in January, we were pulling our hair out saying, how on earth do we convince people that care matters to our societies, to our economies? And now 6 months into a pandemic, which has shown very clearly how central care is and the contradiction of the global economy in chronically undervaluing care often provided by women, this has created an opportunity, a huge opportunity for us to really shift the landscape on how we think about care, how we value care, how we pay for care. And there must be countless other issues, and we've covered a few already in this conversation, where I think if we dream big, then we really have a chance to make some transformative, once in a generation change, exactly as you said, Hala, at the start of this call. And if we don't do that, then I think we're letting ourselves and future generations down, because this will just be some sort of, a pandemic that disrupted the world and all we did was go back to business as usual. That's not good enough.
Amen to that. And I think we all agree. And I just want to say, as a Nordic woman, there is no choice between competing hard and caring deeply about people and our only home, the planet. We have shown in the Nordic region that I believe not only can we do both, but that creates shared prosperity. We may not have it all right, but we know that there is areas in this world that get it righter, and we could all do a lot better if we learned to embrace both and a little less of that otherness or that choosing one direction at the expense of another. Everything needs to come together now. It's interdependent. It's about justice, and it's about all stakeholders. So a massive gratitude from the B team to all of you Bs. Keep buzzing, keep doing bold and brave leadership in your companies, but also keep bringing others along, because we need it. And to the audience, thanks for your questions. Thanks for being with us. Let's be the change. This is the moment. Let's not fail the future generation to giving them the future they expect and deserve. Thank you all. Download the CEO guide.
Great job on the CEO guide, Hala, and fantastic moderation.
Thank you. Oh, you are just fantastic. I appreciate you making the time, sharing so authentically, all of you. Take care. Stay strong throughout this week and beyond.
Thank you, Hala. Thank you so much. Very nice.
Thank you.
Thank you.